Hello everyone out there in YouTube land. Welcome to part 4 of my videos of my EC Comics collection. This will be the last installment, and I'm going to cover my sci-fi books. EC published a few. The ones I have here that I'm going to be covering are weird science, weird fantasy, weird science fantasy, and incredible science fiction. The main two were weird science and weird fantasy, and they were started in 1950 along with most of the main EC titles as we know today, like Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, shock suspense stories. Those were all started in 50. And these were the brainchild of William Gaines and Al Feldstein. And Wally Wood also did the lion's share of the art, and he was fantastic. He did most of the covers for a long time. And these books weren't as successful as the others for a few reasons, but rumor has it these were William Gaines's favorite books that they published. So he would use the money that, the successful books like Mad and Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror and all those made, and he'd use it to keep these books alive as long as he could. And I don't think they weren't successful because of the art or the stories. I think it was a confused set of titles for multiple reasons. Sorry for the wobbling there. These books, when they came out in 1950, as I said before, they didn't like to start over a book at number 1. Back then it was looked at, if you had a book in high digit numbers, it was looked at as an established successful title. So they didn't start it back over at number 1. Weird Science, the first issue was number 12, and 12 through 15 kept the original numbering of it was a romance. I think it was like Saddle Romance or Western Romance title before this. But they kept that numbering, and then the post office asked them to change it. So at 15, they counted 12 through 15 as the first 4, and after 15 they went to number 5. And this was confusing because there ended up being, 2 number 12s through 15. One published in 1950, the other published in 52. Especially for back issue collectors, it got confusing. And the other problem was, when I get to the weird fantasies, the logos were identical except it said weird fantasy with science in the border. So people would get confused and think they already had those issues, and they might also think that it's one title. So that's part of the reasons I think these were not as successful. But another cool note about these books, Weird Science in particular, the movie Weird Science from the 80s with Anthony Michael Hall and the wonderful Bill Paxton as Chet, that movie actually was juiced up with comedy and whatnot, but it was loosely based on a story called Made, M-A-D-E, of the Future. Not Made, M-A-I-D, but M-A-D-E of the Future in issue number 5, which I don't have. But that was pretty cool. And the other thing was HBO, when Tales from the Crypt was a successful series for them, they decided to adapt weird science and weird fantasy into a series, but they foolishly called it Perversions of Science. So no one, including myself, knew that it was based on these books, and it wasn't successful like Tales from the Crypt, and it was done after 1 season. But anyhow, that's enough backstory on these for the moment. I want to get into what I have, and this is the first one I have. This is number 11, and this is an Al Feldstein cover. A lot of these books, unfortunately, aren't in the best shape because, the kids that own these love them, obviously. They blew some kid's mind in the 50s. Missing 12, but here's 13, and this is not too bad. It's got some spine rolling, a little damage, flake in the bottom right corner, but these are where Wally Wood, he might have done 12, but, Wally Wood did most of these covers, and he was just a master. Look at that cover, man. For back then, he was known for drawing women, great sci-fi monsters, and he was just a master. He's one of my favorite EC artists out there. Here we have number 14. Another wood cover. I mean, just look at the detail in his work for the 50s. Sorry about the focus. I mean, these books are just like every cover's a masterpiece. Here's number 15. This is one of the books I'm talking about. It was just trashed. This is in poor condition. Some kid read the hell out of this, but you know, I don't think in my age, except for possibly Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns, I don't think I'll ever know the amazement that these kids had in the 50s opening their first issue of Weird Science or Tales from the Crypt. I can't imagine just how that blew their mind, because it was so radically different and ahead of everything that was coming out. You know, I was a kid when I read Dark Knight Returns, and I knew it was special and different, but I just don't think it was on the magnitude of, you know, what these kids experienced because of how far ahead of the times these books were. But you know, you're going to see a lot of Wally-Wood masterpieces here. Going to move down now to issue number 16. This, it's got a couple problems. Actually, it has a big problem there, a big chunk out of the bottom right below Science. But the colors are bright, and this is one of my favorite covers by Wally-Wood. This is just gorgeous. Look at that. I mean, if you're a kid in the 50s, you'd have to have that. I mean, as a grown man now, I have to have it. And what's interesting to note here is any fans of The Simpsons will know Kang and Kodos, who are mostly on the Halloween specials. Matt Groening openly admitted that their design was based off of this alien by Wally-Wood on this amazing cover. Just love that one. That's number 16. Here's another Wally-Wood masterpiece. This is number 17. It's in pretty bad shape too, but just an awesome, awesome Wally-Wood cover with another great space creature. His detail, his women, his monsters, he was one of the best of the time. Here we have number 18, Wally-Wood again. And again, it's got some rips and chips and things of bright color, but a lot of good stuff in these books and on the covers. Here's number 19, and again, some problems, but just another amazing cover. Look at that, the zombie astronaut outside the airlock, and this is in, you know, this is in the 50s, man. That's cool. These books, some of them were used in the Senate hearings, but whoopsie, want that to fall. But maybe when I'll see them, it'll come back to me. I'm having trouble remembering which one. I know one or two had a controversial story, and we'll get into that in a bit. But moving along here, we have Weird Science number 20, and again a Wally-Wood cover. Alone in space with 50 frozen dolls just waiting to be thawed. Now let's see, eeny, meeny, miny. And yeah, that's not the stuff the Senate wants to see little kids, you know, being sold to little kids, but that's an awesome cover. Here we have number 21, and this is in rough shape, but I love this Wally-Wood cover. He does such good detail, always a man and a woman, kind of like your classic pulp covers, and a lot of times just an amazingly designed monster. Here's Weird Science number 22, and this one's not in too bad a shape. And again, if I can focus, a beautiful wood cover. He's, like I say, Jack Davis and Graham Ingalls and Johnny Craig, and so many did such great work. Feldstein, and this is a Feldstein cover here on issue number 7, which is pretty banged up. not horrible, but pretty banged up. But yeah, they had so many great artists, but Wally Wood, just his entire body of work for EC might make him my favorite. You know, I love Frazetta, but he didn't do much work for EC here. This is, we're getting into the weird fantasy now. And I'm going to pull one back up top so you can just see why this might confuse people in the 50s. There's the logo for Weird Fantasy with science in the margin. Weird Science with Fantasy in the margin. If you didn't have your books on hand and they were at home, you might not remember which one you had if you're a kid. So that's just what I wanted to illustrate. One of the problems, I think, that contributed to shiesty sales for this book. Don't you fall again. Sorry about that, everyone. But yeah, I just wanted to illustrate how the logos are identical with just one word swapped. So, very confusing. But here's an issue number 9, and it's not in the worst shape. Actually, yeah, it's got a rip down by the staple. But we got another gorgeous cover by, I believe this is Feldstein this time. But number 11, and this one's tore up. Another Feldstein cover. He was doing a lot of the early stuff because like I said, this book was his idea with William Gaines. He likes a lot of rocket ships and stuff. But Wood took over not too long. This is a pretty cool one. Feldstein doing some aliens here. This is issue 16, sorry. Feldstein doing some aliens here. And kind of comical. 2 planets smashing into Earth. Yuckity yuck yuck. Number 17. This is a cool Feldstein cover if I can get some focus on it. Dinosaurs and rocket ships. 2 of a child's favorite things. So they designed a lot of cool covers here. I keep these from falling, I apologize here. But they designed a lot of cool covers for all their books, but I really like a lot of these sci-fi covers. Some of their most legendary covers were on these books, and I'll be getting to that soon. You know, because you had other guys come along like Orlando, like Al Williamson, and Frank Frazetta would work with Al Williamson early on. So you had a lot of good stuff here. Sorry about that, but now we're moving on to a brutalized copy of Weird Fantasy, number 19. And oh, they're out of order here. I apologize here. But, well, whatever. This is number 19, and this is Joe Orlando's first cover here. And it's a pretty neat one. They're in bad shape. And this is number 18. Like I said, they got out of order somehow. But this issue is in horrible shape. As you can see, huge rips in the bottom. Somebody read the hell out of this issue, and you want to know why? This is Weird Fantasy 18. First, we'll zoom in on this cover. I don't know if that's Feldstein or not. It's kind of hard to tell when they don't sign it, or maybe it's signed where it ripped off. But I think it's Feldstein. But there's no real human faces to tell. But the reason this issue is so important is because it had a story in it called Judgment Day, where an astronaut representing it was like the Galactic Republic or the Alliance of Planets, whatever they were calling it. He lands on this planet inhabited by robots, and he finds out the orange robots are discriminating against the blue robots, and they have no rights. Obviously, this was an analogy to the civil rights struggle. And in 1953, when this was published, that was pretty radical. The civil rights movement didn't take place for many years after that. And the big exclamation point at the end of the story is the astronaut decides that this planet can't be part of the Galactic Federation, or, you know, whatever it is, the Republic, Galactic Republic, whatever they called it, I apologize. But anyway, he decided because they discriminate against the blue robots, they couldn't be part of their peaceful Galactic Republic. And on the last panel, the astronaut takes off his helmet and reveals that he's a black man. And this was really radical and really pushing the envelope. Rumor had it that it really upset William Gaines, the publisher. And I'll get to that a bit later. But this issue is legendary in the history of EC Comics and comic history because of that story. Just really, really pushing the envelope, making a political statement that was radical at the time. Moving on to Weird Fantasy, number 20, with a pink border. Before the breast cancer movement, but this is an Al Feldstein cover. And a pretty cool one. Crashed rocket ship with skeleton bodies. Pretty neat. And it's, again, a lot of these are in rough shape. This is an awesome cover. One of my favorites. Weird Fantasy, number 21. Al Williamson and Frank Frazetta. And this is a pretty well-known cover, pretty legendary. Space lady, caveman fighting some kind of alien. And that is a badass cover. Love it. Absolutely love that. Moving down here, we have Weird Fantasy, number 22. And this is a Joe Orlando cover. They're excavating some type of alien, huge alien dinosaur skeleton on another planet. And you can see the scale of the rocket ship next to it. It's huge. Here's where they combine the two. This is Weird Science Fantasy, number 23. Like I said, William Gaines loved these books. And around this time, the sales for them were so bad, he combined them into one title, Weird Fantasy and Weird Science, to avoid any more confusion and to try and condense them to help sales. And they just called it Weird Science Fantasy. So, this issue, they went back to Wallywood. They had a white border with a rocket. It makes them hard to find in good shape. This is horrible. This is in poor condition, but the part that Wallywood drew is intact. And that's a pretty cover. The astronauts are underwater, and they might not make it. Masterpiece again. Here's another, I don't think Frazetta. This is a Weird Science Fantasy 25. It's not too bad, actually. But this is an Al Williamson dinosaur cover. And I don't believe Frazetta aided him on this, but that's still a pretty sweet T-Rex cover. Moving along over here, they brought Feldstein back, and this is, this is pretty neat. Special issue, EC challenges the U.S. Air Force with the illustrated factual flying saucer report. Documented evidence, names, places, dates, quotes. And an Al Feldstein cover with what looks to be a B-52, maybe. Not sure. Don't know my airplanes that well, but some type of a big bomber going past a UFO. And, whoopsie. Last but not least, we have the last four of, oh my goodness, the last four of my EC Sci-Fi books, but some of the most important are here. Oh dear, I almost made a whole video without letting a book fall behind the boxes. Oh well, it's not meant to be. Anyway, we have Weird Science Fantasy, number 27 here, and this isn't a bad copy. And as always, awesome Wallywood cover with a well-drawn woman and a man with a gun fighting an alien beast. It never gets old from Wally. Never does. Now this issue is something special. And this actually isn't in too bad a shape. It has a couple dings on the spine. I'd give this book probably a 7, definitely a 6 to a 7. And this is Weird Science Fantasy 29, black border. This is the only cover the legendary Frank Frazetta did for EC Comics. And what this cover was, what makes this cover special, if I can get some focus on it, what makes this cover special is that it was originally a Buck Rogers cover that wasn't used. It was deemed too violent for Buck Rogers. And they turned the aliens into cavemen, and they removed Buck Rogers' helmet and made his hair blonde, and here you have this cover. It's legendary. It's by one of the greatest artists in the history of comics. And publisher Russ Cochran called this cover to Weird Science Fantasy 29 the greatest cover ever to appear on a comic, and I quote the man. But that's an awesome issue and a pretty nice copy, if I might say. After this, number 29 was that already the last issue of Weird Science Fantasy, and they changed it to Incredible Science Fiction, and it only ran 3 more issues, and I only have 2 of them. This is a Jack Davis cover to number 31. It's a cool cover, but I got a big chunk of it missing. Somebody didn't like the comics code and took a bite out of it. This issue right here, this is Incredible Science Fiction number 33, a Wally Wood cover. As always, well rendered. But this issue is important for multiple reasons. First of all, this is the final issue of any comic book that EC Comics ever produced. And the reason why is because this issue reprinted the Judgment Day story I told you about from Weird Fantasy number 18, about the blue and the orange robots and the black astronaut. Rumor has it William Gaines was very upset that this issue was going to reprint that story, and it resulted in a dispute. I'm not sure who with, maybe Feldstein, I don't know who it was. But he got so mad about it that William Gaines quit comics forever because of that. Racist? Maybe. Unfortunately, it was a sign of those times. But it really is sad that he let that stop the creativity at EC, that he had to be that closed-minded about it. Maybe if it had happened years later, he might have had a different reaction. But that's a sad tale behind the demise of the EC Comics sci-fi stories and the company in general. The last 2 books I have, I'll just show real quick, and these are like 47 or 49. These are the earliest EC books I have, and they're picture stories from World History number 1 and number 2, and they're in rough shape. They're in rough shape. These are probably about 3 or 4, maybe even a 2. These are in rough shape, but that's back when they were called an educational comic. And these books, along with picture stories from the Bible, were among William Gaines's father's favorite books that he published before he handed EC over to his son. So those are the last 2 books I have, and that will actually conclude my videos of my EC Comics collection. I hope you enjoyed seeing all my books, because I enjoyed showing them to you, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos. So thanks for watching, and happy reading.